Hi there, Jess here, welcoming you back to Street Science TV to continue our lessons on heat transfer. Now, I already talked about heat as a movement of particles, a type of energy. And we've discussed the first method of heat transfer, which we call radiation, occurring at a distance. Let's now explore convection. Now, convection is the transfer of heat through a fluid medium. Bit of a tricky phrase, hey? Now, when I say the word fluid, a lot of people think of liquids. We do describe liquids as flowing because the particles in liquids are constantly flowing or moving easily past one another. As a liquid too, they do maintain the shape of their container. But if we think about it, since those particles are flowing, they're moving, we can already assume they've got a fair bit of heat energy to allow that movement. Which is why, well, we can melt ice into liquid water by heating it up. I've also added a bit of food dye into my liquid water to make it easier to see. And, well, we'll do a little pretend experiment here. I'm using a plastic cup, so I'm not actually going to heat it up too much. But let's imagine we are boiling the water inside my plastic cup. I have a source of heat here, my Bunsen burner, and it would directly contact the very middle, the bottom of my cup. As that heat, well, moves into that water, those particles would start to move more. Now, those fluid particles of water are quite close together, but as they heat up, they get more energy. And if you've got lots of energy, say at a disco, you start dancing more wildly, well, you're going to have a bit more space between you and the people next to you. The same thing happens with our particles of liquid. As they heat up, they start moving further away from each other. And since they move further away from each other, they have a lower density, which means they rise up. They float towards the top of our solution. But as they move further away from the heat source, well, they aren't getting as much energy. So they would cool down and sink back down to the bottom. Those particles move less, are closer together. But at the bottom, they're closer to the heat source. So they rise up again. And we get these beautiful convection currents, rising away from the heat source and sinking back towards it. Now, I could find a glass container and I could boil some water for you, but that's pretty ordinary. And we like to make things a little more exciting at Street Science. So we're not going to use the fluid medium of water to show you convection today. Instead, I'm going to use another fluid medium, one you guys actually know really well, one you're using right now but don't even think about. We're going to use a fluid medium that's invisible. Okay, it's not that impressive. We're going to use air. People often don't think about air as fluid, but, well, it's one of the most fluid things we have. Those particles are flowing all over the place. Our particles of liquid keep close together, but particles of gas already have so much heat energy, they're moving around like crazy. There's heaps of space between them, which means they don't reflect light to our eyes. We can't see them. But they still follow fluid dynamics and they still move in predictable ways. So we can still make convection occur if we add some heat energy from one source. And the source we're using today is tea bags. Yeah, it's a little strange, I know, but bear with me. If you cut open a tea bag, empty out the tea, save it for later in a teapot, you get these beautiful little tubes of paper, which, well, is quite flammable. And of course, being a street scientist, I'm going to prove it by setting them on fire for you. Now, this is actually an experiment that mum or dad could help out with at home if you wanted to give it a try. But please never ever attempt science experiments with fire on your own. Be safe. What I'm going to do, now that I've stood my little tubes of paper up, is set them on fire. That paper becomes our source of energy to create heat energy in our flame. That's going to heat up the air above it, our fluid medium. As it heats up, those particles are going to rise, and the tea bags, well, I'll just let you see for yourselves, shall we? A little bit of combustion to create our heat energy from our chemical fuel. And watch. That heat energy is moving into the air, which moves up and up and up, taking those beautiful tea bags with it until it cools down and they drop back down again, making these beautiful little tufts of ash and showing us that beautiful movement of our fluid air as it heated and cooled, creating our convection current and transferring the heat elsewhere in the room. Stay tuned to Street Science TV for our next lesson, talking about conduction to finish our heat transfer series.